Welcome, all fellow wannabes. Welcome to the show. I am Gabriel Fast. You are listening to the Wannabe Critic podcast. Today, I am joined by Me Like Bees bass player / Jake J-Thrill Bennett himself, the bearded lady. How's it going, Jake?
Good. Yeah, not bad. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a nice Tuesday afternoon. You know, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you gotta get that McDonald's life. You know what I mean? So I ate a Big Mac.
Whoa.
Got a little tummy ache, but I'm doing okay. You know, I don't know why I don't learn.
You have to get the McDonald's life going.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm happy to be sitting down here talking to you. Definitely wanted to have you on the podcast for a while, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to make it happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Wannabe Critic podcast, your one-stop weekly shop for diversity and family-friendly-ish content. In our attempts to create quality content. We branched off into several podcast feeds, of which are available to you as the listener. You can head over to wannabecritic.com to check out those various podcasts. But, Jake, they do not want to hear us talk about that crap. They want to hear us talk about you. So, Jake, Joplin native still, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So, you haven't really, I'm from Joplin as well. We kind of are, I would call us friends, but just kind of distant friends. We're like acquaintances, bordering friends, I would say, kind of been on that mutual grind, I think, just kind of looking from afar and being like, oh, that guy's doing something cool, and really just kind of like a sense of admiration. Would you say that's about right?
Yes, I wouldn't walk on the other side of the mall deliberately to not talk to you.
There we go. Right.
But it's like our life trajectories never really got synced up to where we could regularly hang out. So
right.
That's, so it's not acquaintance, but it's not like, oh, we hang out every day friends. So,
right.
But yes, I would definitely agree.
Somewhere in that.
It's part of the beauty of the internet. Normally that when we first met, at least, that's not something that, was, social media wasn't as big, as it is now. So it's like, I couldn't keep up with all of your stuff and you can keep up with all my stuff in one hub, but
right.
Now you can. So I think that's what's great about it is you can encourage and admire all these different people, that you, for whatever reason, due to geographical location or something, you can't hang out regularly or whatever. But yeah, so yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good way of putting it. Now, how much older are you than me, Jake? Because I'm 25. So how old are you?
28.
You're 28, so you're 3 years older. Because I always knew you were a little bit older than me. So I'm going to take us down a little walk down memory lane. You worked at local secondhand shop, Vintage Stock, whenever I met you. But we had a friend who, was a mutual friend that you went to high school with, Brittany Brault. And I think that's actually, she was favoriting your tweets. And I was like, what? This guy's a rapper. He's from Joplin. What's that all about? So I remember following you and then seeing you in Vintage Stock and being like, hey, I don't know you, but I followed you and you followed me back. And it just kind of, spiraled from there. But I always enjoyed, going into Vintage Stock. And obviously Vintage Stock is definitely, very near and dear to my heart because you could go in there and talk to anyone about anything. You want to go talk about music, go to the music section. That guy's going to talk about, he's going to talk forever, however long you want. And it was the same thing with games. You were always willing, as long as it wasn't super busy, to talk games, which I thought was really cool. So it's nice to kind of see things come full circle as your projects are definitely turning into something, more tangible, I would say, and you're seeing results from those things, and vice versa. I'm kind of in a similar boat, and it's nice to kind of come full circle and have a little chat. So yeah. I do have to warn you, just in case I forgot to tell you this off mic, but just in case we lose connection because of Zoom, because internet is, internet's gonna internet and stuff like that, we'll just kind of pick up where we left off type thing. But so you are, I want to talk about the J-Thrill side of things. Just kind of get into it. So Jake J-Thrill Bennett, you have, correct me if I'm wrong, I was listening to your stuff last night. I'm trying to do my homework and kind of compile some thoughts. You have 4 records out. Is that correct?
I was talking to someone else, and I couldn't remember. So let me check. Let me see. I think I have discography. Okay, I have There's one EP, there's two EPs, there's three EPs. So two full length records, three EPs, and one live record.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was listening to, which in your live record is kind of a, would you call it like a best of? For, like were those like your favorite songs to play? I mean, in that live record.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the live experiences. Um, it's a mixed bag. I think there's some that I don't wouldn't consider my favorite songs that I play live, but that are more. Well, I don't know. Maybe your favorite live songs. I think it's just a different category
Totally.
completely.
Yeah.
So and you never know. I think I try to approach it from every show, at least from that sort of standpoint, where it could be your last show, so you want to play, either your best or your most impactful or your favorites. So, um, yeah, I think for whatever reason, I could have died on the car ride home, and that
Yeah.
would have been my last show. It's just you just don't know for whatever reason, and um, yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part of playing live as J-Thrill is you get to expose all the people that are seeing you for the first time to your new stuff, and all the people that have been there at every show to you're reminding them where you were when you started a couple years ago. You can play some of that older stuff where they're like, oh yeah, I forgot I love that song. So I would say it's a hybrid of like my favorite stuff and um the most like impactful, I guess. But yeah.
And do you think there's also kind of a like this thing in the back of your hand, because I play music too, I record music and
Mm-hmm.
kind of do stuff, and I've played shows and stuff. Do you think there's always that thing in your mind of, oh, I really love this song, but I don't know if that's going to be the right, like, I love playing this song and I know this song sounds great, but is this really going to be the right thing to play for, to coagulate with the rest of my songs in my set? Like, how do those decisions, just at least for J-Thrill, like, how do those decisions kind of get made? Like, what gets left on the
Yeah,
cutting room floor as far as that goes?
definitely. Yeah, that's part of why when you said is it like a best of, it's I try to tailor every show to that show as well. And so I opened up probably one of my favorite shows was I opened up for this guy called Nothing Nowhere. He's kind of like a um, emo,
Yeah,
screamo, rap, hip
little
hop.
peepish a little bit, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I first played with Nothing Nowhere in 2017, I think, so just 3 years. Um, and I love his music. And uh, I was kind of working on the set list, and at the time I was playing with a band, and you kind of tailor. Okay, well, let's play some of my heavier rock influenced songs for this show, and then the live record I was playing a festival with. I think there was 6 rap acts at this festival, and there was like 150 acts total. So it was like, very very minuscule percentage, and I was playing right before Me Like Bees. So I knew that even if the people that were there weren't huge rap fans, they probably I had already either met them or they'd heard of me through the band. So it was like a pretty safe environment. So I can kind of play whatever I want. So that was what was really fun about that show specifically. So yeah, I'd say you definitely try to tailor it to the environment. If I'm playing at a coffee shop, I'm not gonna,
Right.
play one where I expect people to chant the chorus with me, or it's just that's not conducive to that environment. So
Right.
yeah, and you totally get it too. It's like, um, yeah, you have to. I guess you don't have to, right? If I'm Bob Dylan, I can play whatever I want wherever I want. If I'm Eminem, I can play whatever I want
Right.
wherever I want. But at this point in like my career, and you definitely understand, is like, yeah, you have to be courteous of your audience in the environment you're playing them in. But
Right. Kind of like
yeah,
a just figuring out what the best ingredients are for that particular show, and realizing,
yeah,
being self-aware of what is actually happening, in that particular environment. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
So as far as J-Thrill goes, like, is that name J-Thrill, is that very much like your alter ego, like Slim Shady, like, kind of feeling. I mean, because I've never really asked you about this or talked about this, which,
Yeah.
I haven't been able to talk about things, but to me, that's very much what it resonates, because, you talk to you just kind of off mic and whatever, and, message and stuff. And it's very like low key, like, yeah, man, whatever. But then you go back and listen to your live record, or even just watching you on video, it's like a completely different person's on stage. So can you kind of walk me through what is J-Thrill like a Slim Shady of sorts?
I guess that's never how I thought of it. I think part of it is, um, part of it is sort of that uh, braggadocious side of me, and I think you would also. I mean, that's what's great about talking about this with other people that also either make music or they do anything creatively. You, on some level, you have to have a confidence in your work, and so I think as and that's what I love about the nature of like rap, right? It's like being a white person doing rap. It's like the first person that you meet that doesn't know you do it and you tell them, they automatically like, boom, they get a picture in their head, and it's
Right.
like, so that's why kind of what you said is like, when I meet someone on the street, it's not the first thing I lead with, I usually don't even bring it up. Um, and so, but yeah, when I'm on the stage or when I'm recording or writing, and I think there is a level of confidence and braggadocious, especially in hip hop, right, that you
Oh
have to
yeah,
tap
totally.
into. Um, so yeah, I've never really considered it like an alter ego, but it's more of like I don't know, a mindset that I get in, I guess, which I guess could be kind of what you're saying.
Like like a persona of sorts, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, but
yeah.
not to that, like, yeah,
So
full extent type thing.
yeah, and I'm never using it like that's kind of what Slim Shady or even Tyler the Creator's like early work. Eminem writes off his like dark stuff as like, oh, that's not me, that's Slim Shady. So I've never used it as like a shield. I
Right.
just
Yeah.
I think you do have to. I do use like my rap music to say stuff about specific things that are truths. That's one thing I've always tried to do with my music is make everything matter, that you're saying. And so like, one of my favorite lines I've ever written, I was driving to the gym, like not the basketball gym, like the workout gym. And I had this idea of like going to my 10-year high school reunion and people asking me what I do, and I'm telling them I'm a touring musician, and I played my first show in high school ever. My first show in high school was like our back to school party, and so it was this idea of like meeting all these people again, that either like made fun of you for doing it in high school, made fun of you for doing it in college or whatever. And so my favorite line I ever wrote was, "Me like bees on my neck, me like bees on my check. This rapping wasn't paying, so I found what was next, and I did it. I made it. I'm screaming from the stage. Look at everyone who hated." And so, uh, yeah, I just thought that was like, so there's part of the J-Thrill persona that you can say stuff like that without, because I'm not going to say that to someone in a conversation. I'm not going to be
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, look at all these freaking lamos. I'm the
Yeah.
man now,
Right.
but there's an element to the performance of it that you can really get behind as like, yeah, it's like J-Thrill or whatever, which is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And that makes sense too, because, I remember whenever what's the name of that song? Get something. That name of the song.
Let go.
Let Go. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So whenever that song came out, you had a pretty dope music video for it. And after, and I was going to kind of get into this next, you released we'll just kind of get into it. So, back in 2017, I believe that's whenever you released Versus, correct?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, so 2017, mid 2017, you're releasing Versus. You're doing all this press. You're obviously dumping all this money into it, and obviously, you know, having friends that are creative definitely helps. You're filming all this stuff for it and kind of trying to spread the word and spread awareness. It's like, dude, yeah, I think that, the duality of what people see in their head versus what you're actually getting, with J-Thrill music is going to be really cool to see on the record. I remember listening to the record day one, really enjoying it. And very much like, I was like, this is impressive. This rap doesn't sound like this, usually. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times whenever people get so used to hearing a certain thing or get used to such a certain genre of music sounding the same that it all kind of I feel like it's just kind of expected to be a certain way, which is J-Thrill music is very clean. It's very clean rap music, very much reminds me of, like, I don't know if this is the best example, but 808s and Heartbreaks is probably my favorite hip hop album of all time.
My
And there's,
favorite Kanye record for
yeah,
sure.
my favorite Kanye record easily. And there's not one swear word in it. So it's just very, like, I've always appreciated that about your music. You've always been able to have a very clear understanding of what you're trying to say without having to do the typical rap tropes. So I feel like in a lot of ways people weren't really ready for it, for Versus. But obviously, Versus comes out, and would you say that it did not perform the way that you thought it was going to?
Yeah, I think if it really depends on how you define success, but yeah, I definitely what I think the people that listened picked up on it, and they really like got what I wanted them to get out of it. But I guess I thought that the swath would be bigger, So yeah, I think I mean I still have like 40 copies of it on vinyl. It's like yeah, for sure. I definitely would say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Versus doesn't perform the way you think it's going to, and I could tell things were kind of sad and things like that. And then you release Emotions, that EP that came not far after that, and to date I think that's probably been, I remember listening to it, and I think I remember even messaging you about it and saying, like, dude, it sucks that it's under these certain circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
but this is probably my favorite thing you've ever made. And I think there was a line in a song, um, I let him down, they saw it coming, everybody but me, and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
just like a really good representation of, I think, how a lot as creators, you're kind of talking about this before, your biggest fears coming to life of, I feel like any creator who has a measure of, like you said, however you define success, there's always going to be this sense of, well, at some point people are going to figure out that I'm a fraud. Like, people are going to figure
Yeah.
out that I'm not really this thing that I really want to be. But in your case, it actually kind of came true in some ways, because what you were wanting to be so bad with Versus, I think like you said, you thought the swath was going to be bigger, and then having to directly, like you said, speaking those truths directly, emotions coming out of that. At that point, I thought J-Thrill was done. Like, I thought that was, and at that point, did you kind of think that J-Thrill was done in a way?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what is it at the end of uh yeah, that's it's that one. It's Disappointment, I think, where I was it wasn't the last song I wrote, but it was the last song it was the last song I wrote. It wasn't the last song I recorded. It's not the last song in the story. But I had finished, I think, what is there, 5 songs? I finished the first, second, fourth, and fifth, and I was writing Disappointment. And it was on the it literally is. I mean, I'm not lying in the song. It's the last page in the journal that my friend bought me to write songs in. And it's like the end of the book, and it's like, you kind of, I think I say that in the song. It's like, I think I'm writing it. I'm on the last page right now. I guess I'm done spitting. And I
Yeah.
said, it's got to be a sign, right? If it's from him, meaning, if this is my preordained time to be making music from like God, then, it's got to be all right. You have to be okay with that because, um, if your mission is accomplished, essentially. So, yeah, I think in that moment, writing that and putting that out, I think so. And yeah, I don't know. That was weird, because I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know why I'm so meta and like so stupid niche with like my music. I wish I could just make normal music, but it's like, like you said, like no one made me write, 5 songs based on the emotions of releasing my last record that failed. Like I could have just put something else out, something normal,
Right.
and so,
Instead of trying to,
yeah,
like, use, instead
that
of,
just
yeah.
seemed ingenuine.
Yeah, no,
So
I totally get that. And it almost is like, it kind of felt like you were having a relationship problem, or having to deal through a relationship with yourself a little bit.
yeah,
And, that was kind of like a breakup record in a lot of ways, with certain parts of the persona of what J-Thrill is and things like that. And that's kind of how I always interpreted it. Which that may not be the case. That's the beautiful thing about music is, obviously this thing's called, is called Emotions, and there's 2 sad faces that start and begin in the title. Which I was like, okay, well, Jake is obviously sad here, and expectation versus reality is always going to be a challenging thing, I think, with anything you make. Like, I'm working on music right now, and I think you can probably attest to this, that whenever you make a song and, you're mixing it and you're like trying to mix it, you're doing your thing, and then whenever you hit that export button after you think you have a good mix, you're like, God, please sound good mixed down. You know what I mean? And then whenever you finally get it out and it's like the right volume, and like there's like one specific part you were trying to focus on so bad, and like it hits that, all that turmoil that like you had just bottled up, like kind of comes out a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted it to sound like. But you kind of go back to that thing of what meta is. And I truly believe this. I feel like a lot of times people release all these really personal things, and we'll kind of correlate this a little bit. Maybe you can agree. We're not famous. You're more famous than I am, I would say. You're definitely famous amongst the Joplin community, I would say. Especially Me Like Bees has gained a lot of traction in the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But if you guys didn't keep making the music you were making in Me Like Bees, which I would for the most part say is, I don't want to say generic because that's the wrong word. I think it's very safe rock music. I like it. I think a lot of people who come across it like it for that reason. So gaining all this traction, let's say Me Like Bees gets super duper huge, and then you guys release this really personal record, from a much more different standpoint. People are going to be like, that's kind of weird, that they would go from here to here, but it would work because you have a loyal fan base. Whereas I think it's really hard to go against the grain of being meta, like you said, and saying, well, this is the music that I want to make right now. Like, this is the personal music that I'm trying to put out right now. But people aren't ready for that because they don't like know you as well. Do you think that do you think that is like, am I onto something here? Can you kind of riff off that?
Sure. Yeah. Those sentiments have definitely been echoed in like the closed door Me Like Bees meetings. Like, our guitarist Pete is writing a lot of the singles that we're putting out now. And he literally, he said that. He's like, I'd love to write a record right now. And Luke's writing about all these big ideas, and we're working on, a record. And Pete says it doesn't matter if we put the record out if we don't have an audience. So, Pete's goal right now is to, you're right. Like, we're putting out singles that are, we have a guy that's like shopping them for like commercials and like, YouTube ads and stuff like that. And so, we're trying to gather more audience for the record that, we want to put out. So that's kind of, that's exactly it. It's, I don't think the quality's going down. I think it's just that it's different, it's not the odds. So, and I think that, for right now in our career, we're all okay with that, so.
Well, that's good. And I think, just as coming from someone like the Wannabe Critic podcast is such a generic, not generic, it's such a more broad show, and we review stuff. That was the goal with Wannabe Critic Productions when I started it last year was, it came from Geekly Biweekly, as we mentioned off mic, and it's, sorry about the confusing branding, by the way, just kind of growing as time's going on and kind of change stuff. But,
no worries.
As someone who their main YouTube channel is, that's what I do, is I review music. And in true Wannabe fashion, it's like, hey, like, this is what I think of this thing. And being an audience member, like, I feel like there's been lots of good feedback from certain bands of, you should listen to what the feedback is from from a Wannabe, in my opinion. Because that's going to be your truest form of expression, and truest like connection that you'll have is, okay, this guy obviously takes music seriously, wants to give his opinion, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And again, I'm just a 25-year-old kid, but as someone who's listened to all of Me Like Bees music, I love it all. I think my favorite thing you guys have put out so far has probably been the Long Gone EP. It was like, it seemed, and of course that was a collaboration with a comic book, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was a really cool idea, and I love seeing that. And then kind of, anxiously awaiting what you guys are going to be doing in the future is something that I definitely look forward to. But it's nice to hear that you guys are, I think there's a certain recipe for success, or it seems to be a certain recipe for success. It's like, once you have an audience, like, try and keep it and try and keep them entertained, try and make music that is, a balance between what they really want and what you really want. And then whenever you get to the point where you can do whatever you want, the audience is going to be there regardless, so hopefully I hope that's what happens with Me Like Bees, in your case. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add to that? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's pretty astute, right on the nail on the head. I think there's a book Pete read about the goal to 1,000. It's like if you have 1,000 dedicated fans in any arena, podcasting, music, whatever, then this it can be your full time job. So if you have 1,000 people buying every shirt you put out, going to every show that's within an hour and a half of them, uh, buying every record, watching every video or whatever, then that's enough income to make it your full
Right.
time thing. So I think that's the goal, and so you're right about that. So
Nice. Well, that's cool. And yeah, definitely in the YouTube world, it's like my goal is starting a production company and working with a variety of people to do stuff, and
right.
working in all these different avenues, and whatever happens. But obviously YouTube has to be a big part of that, because how are you going to get your name out there and like show people what you can do if you don't have that outlet?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, and what you're saying is right too. Like YouTube won't even consider you for the partnership program until you have 1,000 subscribers and
Huh.
X amount of watch time, which is interesting. So that makes what you're saying makes a lot of sense too. Having 1,000 dedicated people to
Yeah.
your, whatever it is you might be doing. So dope.
Which what the freaking what was the no, it was the Rogue One? Was it the Rogue One guy?
Oh yeah, Gary Whitta.
Yes, I saw that and I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah,
So
it
I saw it on
was.
Twitter, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really an honor. Like I say, an
Well,
honor.
talk
Like
about your success.
y-
Okay, so that had to have helped your YouTube, right?
yeah, so that was with our and for the listeners, if you've heard me and Carter talk about the Joker 100-page 80th anniversary 100-page super
That's what it
spectacular.
was.
Yeah. Um it was one of those things where you're always trying to network with people, right? And Twitter is really where I think, because the ultimate goal is to have this production company and make it into the games industry and work in the games industry one day. That's my ultimate goal. But I think being able to showcase a body of work similar, in a similar type of field is really important. And I know I like to listen to music. I feel like I know music. I'm a musician. I'm multi-instrumentalist. Like I feel like it speaks to me, So we started a second YouTube channel for the podcast exclusively, which basically it kind of encompasses every work that we do. So like this episode will be on that particular YouTube channel. Whereas my music reviews are just on the main Wannabe Critic channel, if that makes sense. So basically
Yeah.
I can pick and choose from any of our podcasts that we record, and put those on the on the podcast YouTube channel. But yeah, it was kind of cool. Like we put it up there. I tweeted it out the day before I put it out. I said, "Hey, Gary Whitta, go check this out." Gary Whitta, Greg Miller, they're part of Kind of Funny. Don't know if you know what that is, but they wrote one of the stories. And the next day, I got a tweet and it's like, "Hey, everyone, the Wannabe Critic, the guys over at the Wannabe Critic, like they reviewed the thing and they liked it. Like, go check it out." So yeah, it got us it got us some watch time and some traction, and it was a really cool moment. But that was definitely a cool like validation of, wow, people are noticing like what we're doing. Have we made it? Like, have we made it? And are we making money? And like we have all these all this traction, all these followers? No, we don't. But that's okay, because those small moments of validation are that little bit of gas that gets put back in the tank that keeps you moving forward. And I'm sure you've experienced those moments, like that,
Yeah.
like working with Nothing Nowhere. That Houdini record was awesome. Like, and he's really kind of working up the ranks as well. I mean, what was kind of one of those moments for you? Can you give us an anecdote maybe?
That show for sure. And then, I mean, they stayed in my house that night. So,
Really?
yeah, we like hung out and I asked him why he didn't play, my favorite song of his at the show. And he's like, well, I just didn't really think it would work. And I literally told him, I was like, well, this is awesome from a writer standpoint because of this, and this. And I think you did really well at those. And he was like, oh, wow, I'd never thought about it in that way. And so, then I played again with him a year and a half later in Springfield again. So at that point we were like buddies. And when I was sound checking, he like walked in, he's like, J-Thrill, so it's like, so we're like, I guess I'd call us kind of like acquaintance friends. And so they played that song on tour, and I commented on their drummer's Instagram video of it, and I was like, I remember convincing you guys to play this song, kind of being like, hey,
Give me the credit,
yeah,
yo.
this song's awesome. Thank you for playing it
Yeah,
finally. And
right.
he replied back, he's like, yeah, I remember that. That's exactly why. And so that was one of them. And then I opened for Andy Mineo, which was like a big deal. And so that was a really good show. And so I think those would be a couple of like the flagstone
When like
moments
one of
for
your
me.
heroes, you've mentioned Shad K a couple times in your music. You got to have like a one-on-one with him one time, right? You got to like kind of have go out to dinner
Yeah.
and like, I mean, what was that like? And I mean, would you consider him one of your heroes?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't think any of my music would be what it is without his influence for sure.
So
So
what's that like whenever this person you admire so much and you're like, oh my God, like this guy's awesome. And like, we're going to dinner and like hanging out. And like, I remember seeing the Polaroid that got taken and you're like grinning like an idiot, like you
yeah,
could tell, you could tell, I just, in my mind, I'm thinking like, he's trying to play it cool, but you could tell like you were over the moon, excited to be sitting down with one of your heroes. Like kind of walk me through what that was like.
yeah, it was crazy because he doesn't play in the States very often. He's from Canada, and so actually most people know him now from the Hip Hop Evolution Netflix docuseries. So he's a host of like a three season docuseries now, where he just goes through the timeline of hip hop and like interviews a bunch of people. But I found out about him a long time ago, and he's just to kind of sum it up quickly, he's my probably at least in my top three rappers of all time, and faith based, like clean, but I mean, one of the best lyricists I've ever listened to. So he doesn't compromise, quality. And so he announced on his Flying Colors tour that he was playing a couple shows in the States, and one of them was Chicago. And I asked my dad that year, I was like, can I get my birthday present in November? Because my birthday's in December. I was like, can I get my birthday present in November and fly to the show? And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so that was all I got that year, was like the flight there and back. And his manager put me on the guest list, and like I just walked in, and they were sound checking, and he like I walked in, actually I got there before them, and they pulled up in their van, and I could hear his voice like outside. And it was one of those weird things where it's like I had this little time of prep where I could be like, oh crap, he's a real person, he's outside right now, I can hear
Right.
his voice. Like, and so that was really cool. And we talked about just like the writing process, and he told me that one of my favorite songs on that record, Flying Colors, came to him. Like, he told me about this dream he had where this little girl was like, because the end of this song is it's like, if we've got all the weapons aimed in all directions, then America don't need Jesus. If we've got good erections and we fix our elections, then America don't need Jesus. And so I was like, I asked him, because especially being someone that's like a Christian, I was like, what does this mean? Like, what are you saying that, is it an if then statement, or are you affirming these things? And he's like, well, I had that, and it came to me in a dream, and this little girl was like singing those refrains on a stage to like an empty auditorium, and it was like a really sad scene. And so yeah, it was awesome. And then after the show, like in his last song of the show, he like came down in the crowd, and he like put his arm around me, and he was like rapping, and then they were packing up, and he's like, hey, we're gonna go grab like post show food if you want to come. And I was like, what? And so he was like, yeah, just hop in the van and we'll go. And I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was a surreal moment to be recognized as like someone that was like important enough to like, I know it's like on tour. I would
Sure.
never do that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right.
so it's, I know I'm just a fan to him at this point. And now we kind of talk regularly on Instagram. And so my goal for my next project is to get a Shad K feature.
Oh, that'd be
That
dope.
was the goal for Versus, and it didn't happen, but that's the goal for my next project, is to get a feature from him. That would be
That's dope.
awesome.
Well, and I think, it's good that you kind of have that self-worth thing and, of saying like, well, I know what that's like. I would never do that. I think it's different whenever you click with a musician. Because I've never been on tour, but I've played shows, like small shows, one night only type stuff where, at local, Joplin Avenue Coffee Company, right? And Area 114 and stuff like that, like different places. And if a musician came up to me and was like, hey, I know your songs. And, they were singing my songs that I wrote, like that are very personal to me or like were at the time that I was writing them, and like they meant something different whenever I'm singing them that time, but like they're singing the words to my songs and they're like, yeah, like I really liked how you put that together, blah, blah, blah. It'd be really hard for me to not be like, dude, come eat with us. So especially since if they were a musician too and like they got it, if you get it, like there's a difference between fandom and like mutual respect. So I think, that might have been like the little turbo boost that he could have had, that you could have given him. You never know that, because if you're on tour, I mean, I've heard stories like how it has to be not only mentally draining night after night, but physically draining as well. Because I mean, I've heard stories of people like you'll play a show and then you literally just do not talk like the next day. Is that true? Kind of walk me through that for a second. I have it on the list, but since we're kind of going there, that's a nice segue. What is it like? Real what is the stigma of being on tour? Like, kind of talk about those versus what it's really like.
I think the stigmas probably ring true for a lot of people. I've been offered a lot of drugs and a lot of like party invites and a lot of
ladies.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not like they're offering themselves to me, but it's like, they're like chatting me up and like, oh, let's go talk at the bar. That show was amazing. Where are you guys staying? Oh my, so it's like all of that. So a lot of those probably ring true for a lot of people, but the guys that I'm very blessed to be in a band with, that's not how we roll. We're like very firm believers in our faith, and so which I think adds to the show. We're there to play music, and that's literally why we drove 20 hours to your city, is for this show, not for the lifestyle. So it's like a lot of times you will wake up, and if the routing is good, you'll drive an hour to the next city. If the routing is bad, you'll drive 8 hours to the next city. If you're lucky, eat lunch at a gas station, and then drive to the venue. If it's open, amazing. If it's not, which is most of the time, you have to wait for the sound guy to get there to let you in. So you either sit in the van. I walk around a lot, different coffee shops I like to hit up. I hit up like some board game shops or some comic shops and stuff like that. And then load into the venue, which a band at our level is you loading in your own stuff. So yeah, it is very physically draining. You got to load in 2 guitar amps, 1 bass amp, bass cab, all the drums, merch bins. You got to do that for 6 nights in a row. Play the show. If you care about it, that's mentally, emotionally, and physically draining. Talk to people after the show, because that's probably the most important part. I don't want to be the guy that you can't find off stage, because that's the people are what we're doing it for. So, you want to be, patient and polite to everyone that comes up and enjoyed your set, because that's literally why you're there, is to connect with people. And then load it all up and do it all again. So yeah, it's rhythmic, but I think it all depends on who you're doing it with, and that's the best part of it. Is I'm very fortunate to do it with a lot of really cool guys.
Well, it's got to be pretty rewarding too whenever you do see the fruits of your labor kind of coming to the, like you're kind of starting to see success from it now, and I remember there was a time. Do you handle the PR for Me Like Bees? Like, are you on the Me Like Bees Instagram? Like, are you the man behind the messages and stuff like that? Like, or is that kind of all of you doing that?
It's a mix. It's usually me or Luke. Sometimes it'll be Lewis. So yeah, sometimes, most of the time it is. Sometimes it's not. It's kind of a mix, but yeah.
I think a couple tours ago, you guys are posting like it felt like at the top of every hour, and it was one of those things where it was like, man, like they are really pushing this out, it's crazy. And I remember seeing like ads and stuff like that, coming to the forefront. And I was like, wow, this is that. It was cool. It was bordering, not irritating, but it was bordering like, okay, we get, I get it. I understand, but I feel like if I'm making the decision to follow that thing and like try and keep in touch and like see what you guys are doing, then that's kind of a part of it, especially as you're like ramping up for this tour and like you're trying to do all this stuff and you're wanting to have all that content out there, not only for people that are already a part of the audience, but kind of new people that you have connected with and stuff like that. But that just as someone who really struggles with social media in general, like I've, for the longest time, it's been the thing of, if you want to hear what I have to say, come listen to the podcast. But, like, okay, tweeted, Instagram, done. But then it just only really recently clicked like, oh my God, like tweeting, Instagram, like that's all part of the job, really. If we want to make this for real, like for me, it's got to be a big part of it. So that's kind of made a more transition the past few months. Do you find that was that ever a challenge for you, or had you kind of already kind of acclimated to the social media side of stuff whenever you're dealing with J-Thrill?
It's definitely a challenge. I feel like if I wasn't trying to like make it part of my job, I guess I wouldn't do it. I don't think I'd do it at all. So yeah, it was fun when you were in high school and when you were in college and all your buddies were like, look at this stupid picture I tagged you, blah blah blah. But it's like now it's not that communal as much as I'm not living with 10 other roommates on the dorm floor and we're like posting stupid story. It's like that era of social media, at least for me, is kind of over. And so it's like, yeah, you're trying not to sell yourself, but that's really why you have it, right? It's like, so yeah, that part's draining for sure. But yeah, or what do 5,000 people that follow the band, what do they want to see?
Yeah.
It's like, do they want to see us like practicing? Do they want to see show pictures? So it's kind of figuring out what part of your experience do people like gravitate and connect with. So yeah,
that makes sense. And it, you guys aren't the Foo Fighters, or that's probably the wrong example. You guys aren't Modest Mouse yet. But it's one of those things that it can only be frustrating. Modest Mouse wouldn't probably have to say hardly anything, ever, because they don't have to, but you guys do. So I kind of wanted to know if that through line was through a different industry, because with the games industry, it's changing all the time. Like I'm tweeting about games all the time and hoping, adding people and saying like, oh my God, like you have that take, like I think that's stupid, blah blah blah. Trying to get noticed, trying to get people to take the bait. You know what I mean? I feel like is the biggest. With any industry, especially a music industry, like that's such a big thing, is just getting people to take that first bite and say, this is good, I'll come back here. You know what I mean? Like, so I can only imagine how that would be. I wanted to take a step back just a little bit to the Me Like Bees and J-Thrill stuff, kind of in like correlation a little bit. So did you find like after J-Thrill, the emotions because you released Emotions concurrently while touring with Me Like Bees for the first time, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So was it that thing of, okay, J-Thrill's done, now I'm Me Like Bees bass player, like that's what I'm doing and I'm content with that? Because that's the vibe as an onlooker that I got. Like, I don't think you ever stop loving rap music, or like, you stop loving making rap music, but I think it just, the focus kind of shifted. How did that kind of work? Oh, the joys of Zoom. I love whenever I'm right in the middle of right in the middle of a question and then it cuts out. It never fails, never freaking fails, but it's okay. But I think you got the gist of the question. Do you remember what it was, or I need to repeat it, or you got it?
It's just, was the timing planned, and was I content with just being the Me Like Bees bass player?
Yes, basically.
The timing of the Emotions release wasn't really planned. I wanted to I think Versus came out in September, and then I wanted to put Emotions out as early as I could. And so that just kind of coincided with when Nick quit and I joined, and then that tour was that summer. So I think that I was okay with the idea that hip hop and rap could still be a part of my life. I don't know if I was okay with with not making it anymore just because I was playing bass. That felt like the easy decision to me, which I've never been really into making. It seemed like the logical. Oh, okay, cool. You failed at that, so you're gonna do this, and it's like that's not really. That's not what I like to do. Is just make the easy decision, I guess, for better or for worse.
Sure.
So yeah, I just kept writing, and and sometimes that was just for me, and sometimes it wasn't. But yeah, I'd say that I think it was good. I think it was a break. What I do, like a year between projects or something. So um, that was good, and I think that's why I'm on to like music is fun now. Because it's like the pressure's kind of gone because I play bass and Be Like Bees, which is really nice. I don't have to worry about, oh, if I put verses out, will it be successful enough to make a living from? That part of it is gone. It's Me Like Bees has provided that safety net sort of. So yeah, I think that has been the biggest upside from the timing of it is now it's like, oh cool, let's just freaking forget about all that. Forget about the packaging. Forget about the logistics of the release. Forget about whether the video looks the same as the album cover. Forget, all the meticulous stuff that creatives don't love doing. So yeah, I think that's the fun part of it now is I can just
Do it.
whatever I want without the underlying like worry, I
Right.
guess.
Of
So
this has to be a success for it to make sense to do
yeah,
it. Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, because
would
yeah.
I drop $1,600 on 100 copies of verses on vinyl next time? No, but I would if I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the decision to make, and that makes sense. And it's nice to hear that you kind of have a positive outlook on it, because whenever Music Is Fun come out, I was like, okay, I thought he was done. Obviously he's not. And that kind of leads me to my next question, because I have some other stuff I wanted to ask you about. So with the Me Like Bee stuff, with the J-Thrill stuff, can we expect anything in the near future from either one of those projects?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on what the near future is to you. Because in the creative world, the near future could mean a year,
Yeah,
right? So,
I think that's
yeah,
fair. I think that's a fair, a year.
yeah, I'm still working on Music is Fun Part Two. The quarantine kind of put a big old hold on that because that's what's so funny is the nature of Music is Fun was like working with your friends. So for Part One, studio session with every single person, come over, sit down, cool. Why do you want to write about this topic? You know that I chose you because your words matter and this song is going to be important to someone and you're not going to know it, but it's going to be important. You're going to give me everything you have. I'm going to give you everything I have. But, so it's like when COVID hit, like you couldn't do that.
Right.
So it was just really funny that it was like, that's what I was working on when like
all this happened.
So that part two is kind of kicking up now, and Me Like Bees where there's a lot of songs in the pipeline. Now we don't know what recording looks like because we usually record in Kansas City, and Joel I think is taking it pretty safe in terms of like COVID and stuff. So we're getting together on Thursday. We're recording this on Tuesday. Getting together on Thursday, and we're going to kind of talk about what that looks like. So yeah.
Nice. Good to hear. Well, that's exciting. I'm a fan of both of those projects, and I'm excited to see what happens. So thanks for shedding some light and kind of giving us a little bit of insight as to what all that's about. So
yeah, and you can on the record you can expect pre-release copies for review.
There you go. You heard it here first on the Wannabe Critic podcast. Dope.
Absolutely, you got it.
Thank you so much, man. That means the world. I appreciate that. I'm gonna be on.
You have to give it a good review.
I say I'll be honest. I'm gonna. That's the thing. I've gotten really good at finding the music that, that's the thing is I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and it's hard to it's hard to listen to something that you're not necessarily, because I listen to a wide variety of music, you know, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that, you know, I just reviewed a post-hardcore album, and then I reviewed like this, you know, I reviewed a My Morning Jacket record like the next week. So it's just always one thing to the next. But I've found my favorite thing to do recently is to sit down with a band I've never heard of in a genre that I don't know anything about, and then trying to formulate that opinion and see if my you know, really flex those reviewing skills. And I've come up with a theory that you're not allowed to have an opinion on something unless you've listened to it front to back 3 times. Because there's a processing period. You know, you can't say I don't like this thing because of this song. It's like, okay, so so you're telling me you listened to this entire record and you don't like this person or you don't like this band or whatever because of this one song. Did you go back and listen to the whole thing 3 times? No? Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to talk to you about the subject because you obviously don't know what you're talking about. You can have your opinion, but I'm not going to value it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And I think that's a fair rule, because there's been records where I'm like, I kind of like this. And then the third time around, I'm like, I don't really like this. Like, I don't kind of like this. Like, I love this, or vice versa. I'll kind of like it the first time, and then I'm bored with it by the third time, you know, and it's interesting to see that process come around. So you can be assured that on either project, I will give my wannabe's honest opinion, you know, and review it accordingly. So good to hear. So I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I wanted to talk about something that's really interesting to me. So your latest venture, one of your latest ventures, is Bearded Lady Roasters, right? Mm. So this is a coffee shop in Joplin. Is this your business? I mean, you started this business? Like, kind of what's going on with that? Like, tell me about that.
I did not. The owner has been roasting for 8 years, but he just did like wholesale, so like to churches and stuff. So
okay.
And then the lead singer of Me Like Bees, Luke, owns a building downtown, and he's known Adam, the owner, for a long time. And Adam kind of graciously was like, I'm going to start a shop in there. Do you want to be one of like the first employees? And I was like, sounds cool, but I have to be gone like
a lot,
sometimes sporadically, sometimes for a long time. Like, so if you're not cool with that, no. And he's like, I'm totally in. Luke owns the building anyway. I believe in you guys, and he knows what it's like to build something. That's what's great. So yeah, and then I think it was me and 3 other people were the first people that kind of like started the shop. So I guess I did help start the shop, I guess, but not the brand. But yeah, so that's been really nice, because you have your ear to the ground in almost every avenue in a city. If you have regulars coming in and did you hear about this? Oh, they're doing a show over here, blah blah blah. You know, so it's been really cool, and he's works with me in terms of like I need to be gone for tour and stuff, and so yeah, it's been fun. It's been a good time. So
that's awesome.
And he's also a Christ follower. He went to Ozark, so that's it's a great environment.
Yeah,
so.
It seems like it's right there in your your wheelhouse, very much so.
You might have picked up on that, because I did start the Cardboard Cafe.
That's what it is.
Had it at Bearded Lady. So
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that was our thing. Just hosted at Bearded Lady. So
okay, yeah, gotcha. That's what
that might have been my bad.
But. No, that's fine. And that's the thing is, whenever you see pictures and stuff, you see the Cardboard Cafe, you don't realize that's an event. I'm like, well, I thought he had Bearded Lady, because I saw you guys on KOAM doing something for the news, Joplin local news and stuff. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, and I should have texted you, but I was saying to myself, did Jake start a coffee shop? Like this guy's like Michelangelo or something, you know what I mean? Like, it was just kind of funny. So it's kind of, okay, so that's interesting. But so you enjoy, I mean, you're obviously a big coffee enthusiast. I think that's kind of been one of your, TM.
Yeah, it's a nice setup.
There you go. Nice. Very nice. And you're a new homeowner too. How's that been going?
That is a learning process as well, my friends.
Yeah, I bet. Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for clearing the air on that. I was just kind of, just sort of curious about it, but it's cool to hear that you've been enjoying it. They say if you really love what you do, it doesn't ever feel like work, but does working at a coffee shop, like, that's work, right?
Yeah, the nature of retail will be, it's whoever comes in that day is kind of in control of how your day is going to go. So,
Sure.
yeah, so there's amazing days, and I love my coworkers, and Adam, our owner, is amazing, and so yeah, it is fun. It has its challenges as well, but yeah,
Nice. Well, that's cool. Well, that's good to hear. Nice to hear that you're in an environment that's relatively easy to be in, so and stuff
yeah,
like that. And
yeah.
is that downtown or where is that? I haven't been to Joplin in a long time. So
It's downtown, so it's south of downtown Burger, if you know where that is.
okay, gotcha.
It's
Sweet.
just that building south, right next to the old library, I guess.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
yeah.
Cool. I know exactly where that's at. That's awesome. So you guys are pretty close to Joplin Avenue then.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Cool. So has that been like? I know you'd played there a few times. Like, is that relationship like? I guess you guys are technically competitors at that point, but I mean, how does that? Is it
Yeah, I
weird? I
think
mean,
uh works with Autumn more regularly than us baristas do, but I'm still friends with all the baristas at Joplin Ave, and still go there a couple times, and so yeah, it's not like a
it's not like weird, like you.
no,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
no.
That's cool.
That's the great thing about Joplin, is it's pretty welcoming
Yeah,
as much as the news headlines would make you believe that it's not. It's like in the creative community, it's pretty welcoming, which is cool.
yeah, that
So,
is really cool, and I can attest to that. Like, there are a lot of the desire to always kind of do something else was always there when I lived there, but I never hated Joplin. It
mm,
was just one of those things like, everyone hate. I feel like a lot of people hate it there, but I had someone else from Joplin on not too long ago, Natty. She runs Happy Hour Wax and Facial. She's actually I produce her podcast. But she's like that's with anywhere. Anywhere is gonna hate on wherever they are, and
yeah,
just that I don't know people just want to get away and it's whatever. If I would have still been in Joplin, I think I would be just fine. I just think I'd still be doing something similar to what I'm doing now, just in a different aspect. But
yeah.
well, I'm glad we kind of talked about that, quote unquote, like businessy, heavier stuff before. Let's get into some fun stuff, some nerdy stuff, here on the Wannabe Critic podcast. So you are probably one of, if not the biggest, aside from myself, Office aficionado that I know. Probably. How many times do you think you've been through that series?
Uh, I mean, I would say the conservative estimate is like, because I've always tried to think of it. I probably watch it at least minimum 2 times a year, and I was watching it when it was on TV. So let's just say for 10 years, uh, 2, 10, 20, and that's conservative. So I would say 30, 30 times, 30 or 40 times.
That's a lot.
So
That's a lot.
yeah,
Is that your definitive favorite show?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Favorite character? That's a hard one.
The sleeper pick is Creed or Stanley. Um, I loved like Leslie David Baker for the longest time. He plays Stanley, and I think he does a really good job with his character. And Creed is, I love that Creed is himself. Like that's the best part of Creed. Like so. Yeah, I would have to say one of those two. Aside from like obviously Michael's great and stuff, and the show wouldn't
Right.
be what it is without Michael. But yeah, one of Creed or Stanley, I think.
Do you buy into, because I have very strong opinions. We've been working on kind of a sleeper project of The Office in review. We've been going through the entire series, 3 episodes at a time, kind of diving. We actually kind of like dove into like the psyche of Michael, like very early on in the first season. And we're gonna start releasing those as pretty soon. But
Nice.
yeah. So it's very. I'm hoping it's gonna find people like you, where you guys can listen to. People can listen to it and be like, oh my god, I never thought about that, or vice versa, been like, I've always wondered about that. I've always deep down inside had those thoughts, but just been kind of like, and no one's gonna vibe with this. So we
Yeah, yeah.
we go there. You know what I mean? Like I'm a huge Office fan. Do you buy into the conspiracy theories like Toby's the Scranton Strangler, and Kevin is actually really smart, but like he just plays dumb for the camera, like
The
stuff like
ratings.
that?
Yeah, I don't buy into much of those, just because I think if that the only thing would be crazy is if the writing team wrote stuff like that in without the desire for a payoff ever. And so that I find that hard to believe. Obviously, it's funny that like
Right.
you know Toby happens to be gone when the Strangler strikes, and so like the coincidences are great, and that's what like you said it about music earlier. It's like that's what's great about art is we can kind of look at it however we want, and so
Yeah.
I do like the idea that Kevin was so smart that he became a character of himself. But yeah, personally, I'm like, nah, I
You're
don't
just
think
you're
so.
just enjoying it for what it is, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I try and do too. And which it's gotten to this thing like the past year where it's hard to do anything without having a critical eye. Two things actually. One, without trying to like put that critical lens and kind of strip away whatever personal feelings or nostalgia you might have for a particular subject.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that, and then also anytime I do anything, it's hard for me to say I'm going to sit down and do this thing because I want to, not because it's going to be for a project.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become like kind of one of those those weird things. And me and a friend were talking about The Office, and he's very like the opposite of me. Like I won't shut up, but he like very much has those Yoda moments where he doesn't say a lot, but when he does, it's very like to the point. It's like, oh my God, yeah, I wish I could do that. And he's younger than me too. I hate him. But yeah, I think whenever we kind of came to the conclusion that we were going to review The Office, it was like, this is going to be fun. It's going to be a fun project, and there's not stress to release them like week to week and all this stuff. It's like when it's done, and people are just going to have
Yeah.
to, it's like whatever. So, I know you play a lot of games. You've been kind of getting into the streaming side of stuff. I'm assuming that's more just for fun. I've watched you a little bit, play some COD. That's kind of always been your thing, right? Is Call of Duty, right?
Yeah, yeah, I got into COD in like high school, I think. Yeah. So
Nice. Is that kind of like just your main go-to? Do you play any story games? Are you Xbox or PlayStation? Like, what's that look like?
what's interesting is the first system we ever owned was a PlayStation. And then my dad got us a PS2 when that came out. And then everything changed when I played Halo at a Super Bowl party. And now I'm an Xbox guy. And so I I do play story games sometimes. I'm more drawn to the multiplayer aspect just because I'm a very communal driven person. The book club that I'm in is because of the great friends that I have that we started it with, and so even reading a book is very solitary, but I know I'm going to get together with a lot of my really good friends to talk about it. Uh, the movies I watched because my buddies were going to talk about, so a lot of the gaming I do is multiplayer just because it's a great, it's one of my buddies used to live in LA. He just moved back last week, but that's a way we could hang out, is play multiplayer. So
Right.
I don't. Some of my favorite story games, Red Dead Redemption 2 was good. I really liked LA Noir. Um, so those are the two biggest ones that jump out to where like, oh, the story was great. So
Both Rockstar Hauser brother,
yeah, true. Yeah,
games. So that's funny you mentioned LA Noir because we don't have time to get into it because that was and at its time it was very kind of state of the art with facial recognition and stuff, but the reception seemed to be so mixed back then even because it was very much like a Twilight Zone show. Like you played a section of the game, it was like playing an episode of a TV show, which I always thought was kind of interesting. It'd be kind of hard to keep that gameplay loop. I don't think the gameplay loop has aged as well as they thought it was going to, because even going back to it now in the definitive edition, it's like, this is weird. I can see the draw and it is fun, and like being transported back into that time period I do like, but that's cool that to you it's like, yeah, I love that game. That's very kind of that speaks to me. So running out of time here, but what two questions. What shows are you watching right now? Like, you said The Office. Is there anything you're currently watching and you're like really into right now? Like what's kind of been the main go-to?
Yeah, I'm watching X-Files right now with my two roommates. So we're going through the X-Files. And so that's been really fun as like a nightly activity. We'll watch an episode of X-Files, and some of them are absolutely terrible. And some of them are like really cool.
Yeah.
So we've been going through the X-Files a lot, watching The Office. Me and my girlfriend just started the new version of Unsolved Mysteries. And let's see, I've been watching a lot of older movies because of the lack of new production. So I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'd never seen Jaws, so I watched Jaws.
Never
Um,
seen Jaws.
no, yeah, and
What?
so
What?
it was like right before we went to Florida for the 4th of July, which is like it's like when Jaws is set. So he's like the beaches will be open on July 4th or whatever. And
Yeah.
so I was like saying that nonstop at the beach. The 4th of July, it was great. My dad hated it, but
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
So yeah, we watched Jurassic Park at the local independent cinema here. They're doing outdoor theater nights, so me and my girlfriend went and watched Jurassic Park there. And so yeah, I've been watching a lot of older stuff, just kind of appreciating it. So
Nice. Yeah, we're working on a little project here called Retro Reviews, where we go back and kind of look at the greats, so to speak. And the idea came to me. I was watching Willy Wonka, and I was like, we got to talk about this on the podcast,
yeah,
because there's so much there that it's like, and again, don't have time to get into it, but whatever. But that's cool, man. That's cool that you kind of been revisiting those classics and stuff.
yeah.
So we've reached the end of our time here, but I do have, one question. What we've been trying to do is get more podcasters on, like get more people on that have a podcast. And people might be thinking, well, Gabe, Jake's not a podcaster. He's a rapper and a bass player and me like bees. But can you confirm, in fact, that you are starting a podcast very soon?
Yes, there are rumors. It is true. Me and one of my roommates and his brother, who was out in LA working on he worked for Disney and like a bunch of stuff. We're starting a podcast. So
Awesome. Is there any details you can give us on what it's about?
I will tell you, we have 4 episodes recorded. 2 of them are edited already, and it's called "This Podcast Is Not for You." Um, it came from the idea that we wanted to do it, and if people listen, that's amazing. But we're not really doing it for anyone else. I've already learned so much about 2 of my best friends just from doing it. So it's about the conversations we're having. So the first episode is about creating in a small town, just kind of introduction stuff. The second episode is about binging. And so we look at the habit and the behavior of binging, not about like what shows are binge worthy. We just talk about binging as a whole. Is it healthy? How does it affect the way that people are writing stories? How does it affect the way people are consuming stories? What are your favorite things that you've binged? Why don't you? Why do you? So that's one of I really like that episode. And then I wrote an episode about your favorite movie theater experiences. So that'll be the third episode, is like, what's the moment burned into your brain that you will never forget at a movie theater? Pate had to leave Phantom Menace in the middle of it, right when Darth Maul came on screen because he was throwing up. So it's like stuff like that. It's like, what are the movie theater moments? What are your favorite movies you've seen in theaters? And what are your badge of honors? Like, I saw Hot Rod in theaters. There's one other person in the theater, and it was at the theater for like 4 days, and I saw it. So it's like,
right,
it's a cult classic, one of my favorite comedies, and I was there to see it. Stuff like that. And then the 4th episode we have done right now is kind of we talk about the trend of nostalgia in media. So like, does it stem from like society's like fear of death, or why don't we want things to have an end? Why is that something that we don't like? Why do we have to keep revising all these different stories and stuff? They're making another Indiana Jones. It's like,
right.
Keep making Jurassic Park,
Star Wars.
keep making Star Wars.
Yeah.
So so it's kind of going to be about multimedia, and we have a bunch of episodes written. We just have 4 recorded, and the plan is to launch the podcast when we have episodes built up. We don't want to be like,
stressing.
Hey, we have a podcast.
Right.
We have 1 episode, and we don't release another one for 3 more months.
I totally agree with that. And just as someone I'm mostly a podcast producer. That's what I spend a lot of my time on. I can tell you from experience, that is the worst thing ever, when the drive is all there. You have everything ready to go, and you have this idea of what you want to be and what you want to do. And then you're strapped for time for whatever reason. And it's like, then you just look like unprofessional, which is the last thing you want, which I think most nine times out of 10, that's what happens with podcasters. But Man, that sounds really fascinating, and I'm glad that we were able to, kind of chat, talk about that and have you do it. We'll probably have to have you come on for another episode, to kind of talk about how the podcast is going, and
I'm down. I can share, if you want me to share my screen, I can show you our logo.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let me. How do I do? I'm. Despite what people think, I'm actually not. Here, I'm gonna make you the host, and you can do whatever you want.
Oh.
There's that.
Share screen. There it is.
Let's see. Love it. Looks good.
That is the little logo. So yeah, I'll send you. I can send you. We have the first episode posted on like a private SoundCloud, so I can send you that link if you want to listen to it.
Yeah, I would love to, man. That would be awesome. It'd be nice to kind of see where you guys are going with it, and definitely just be a part of the audience, before it even launches. I'm totally down. I'd love to shout you guys out too. That sounds awesome. It sounds like, yeah, I totally know how that feels. And, being able to be a part of it too. I'm always looking for new shows, and it's always helping. It always makes me want to listen whenever I have, acquaintances, friends, whatever, that have shows. And it's like, I'm way more apt to listen to that than actually, what they're listening, or, then listen to someone random or someone who actually makes a living doing it. It's like this mutual support and stuff like that. So that's really cool. Really, really dope, man. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for making the time. Yeah. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, let's definitely get together after, your podcast launches, and, we can kind of see how that's going, and see what's going on. We can give us some updates on some of the music side of things and whatnot. Yeah. But if people want to find you, man, where can they go to find you on social media? Plug all your stuff, do your thing.
I guess my Instagram is Jake Bennett 13. My Twitter is J-Thrill Music. All my stuff is on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Tidal, whatever you want to look it up on. Jake J-Thrill Bennett or Me Like Bees. Yeah, I don't tweet much, but if you want to talk to me on there, I'll talk to you back. We know that. You know that. I just don't tweet much on my own.
Totally. But, usually, it's been the funniest thing ever. And one of my favorite things that you do is you intentionally have a hot take to see what people are going to say. Yeah, and it is best. That, and some of my favorite arguments I've had have been over certain things. And not even arguments, just civil debate. You know what I mean? It's like, it's having things like, yeah, but did you think about this, this, and this? It's like, yeah, I did think about that. But what about this, this, and this? And it's like, okay, touche. All right, we go about our day, whatever. It's always friendly. And
yeah, all right, you love Rogue One. All right, I hate Rogue One. That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's keep it sharp, keep it civil, and then that's fine. It's like a wannabe louder with Crowder. There you go, about whatever. So that is good. Well, we are going to sign off here, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely check out wannabecritic.com, see all this different stuff we got going on. This episode is somewhat sponsored by popcultusa.com. They sent me this dope natural light hat that is indeed officially licensed. You can go over to popcultusa.com and get yourself 20% off some officially licensed swag if you use the code _wannabecritic. They got a bunch of stuff over there, like from gaming, music, movies, beer, like pop culture in general. So definitely use that. You'll get a discount. So we are going to sign off here at the Wannabe Critic, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. Say goodbye, Jake.
Peace out.